It's been a long road, getting from there to here. It's been a long time, but my time is finally near. And I can see my dreams come alive at night. I can touch the sky. And they're not gonna hold me down no more. No, they're not gonna change my mind. Why?
Continue. You have to finish the whole thing.
'Cause I've got faith of the heart. I'm going where my heart will take me. Opening hailing frequencies, chief engineers. Welcome back to the Laser Comb Podcast, the weekly show where we comb through random episodes of classic TV shows with a fine-tooth laser. I'm the Siege, one of your hosts.
And I'm your other host, NeoCal.
And this week on the Laser Comb Podcast, we are finally rounding out our Star Trek themed month after covering the first four original live-action Star Trek shows. We are on the fifth and final original Star Trek show, Star Trek Enterprise. So we did it. We're finally through Star Trek month.
We did it.
We did it.
We watched every single Star Wars. So for anybody that somehow has missed the memo, we're reviewing Enterprise.
Yep, Star Trek Enterprise, series that ran on UPN, America's favorite network, from 2001 to 2005. I watched this show while it was airing, originally, week in and week out.
Wow, you were one of the dozen people who watched it episode to episode.
Yeah, I mean, the show by the end of its run had let me get that information here. I rounded out with about 4 million average viewers, but it started out with 12.
Yeah, and you were one of them.
I was one of them. I mean, that's not bad, but it was enough for UPN to cancel the series prematurely. Unlike most of the other Star Trek shows, at least contemporary for the time Star Trek series, which all ran, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager all ran for 7 seasons apiece. Enterprise was canceled after 4, quite unceremoniously, in my opinion, and it features the worst series finale in the entire Star Trek franchise.
What happens? I don't mind spoilering something that ended that long ago. How does this finish?
Well, remember how we were talking last on the last episode of the podcast about how series finales of Star Trek tend to involve time travel in one way or another?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I said Enterprise does kinda, but not exactly. The series finale of Enterprise, and this is how you can tell that this is one way it's kind of obvious that the show was canceled prematurely. The show, from the penultimate episode to the final episode, jumps a decade into the future.
Okay,
and
it's not too bad. A decade.
It jumps a decade into the future. Some bullshit goes down. Commander Tucker ends up dying very out of nowhere. And the United Federation of Planets is formed, and Captain Archer gives the big rousing speech at Starfleet Command, and all of a sudden we hear Riker be like, computer end program, and it turns out him and Deanna Troi, all of Star Trek Enterprise was just them going through the history books on the holodeck. I wish I was joking. I wish I was joking. It is a very, very infamous episode of this show. A show that is already kind of polarizing as it is.
Did they actually get like the actors to come in and...
Yep.
That's how little they thought of the show, huh?
Yeah, and that's why, like, the 4 million of us who actually liked Enterprise and stuck with it for 4 years. That's why fans of the show were so pissed off was because it's kind of disrespectful to this cast and this crew's story to just be like, oh, everything you've been watching is just been a holodeck simulation that Troy and Riker have been going through.
Unless the theme of a movie or a series is about dreams and memories, you can't pull off that, and it was all just a dream.
Yeah.
Nobody ever likes that. Nobody goes, oh, what an ending. That was great. Oh, what a twist. Oh, I'm glad it was just a dream. What? That's never good. There has anything pulled off and it was all just a dream and had like fans be like, oh yeah, other than like Inception.
Dallas, TV show Dallas. I think I think Dallas was one of the first series to actually do that in the finale. Be like, oh yeah, the past like 3 seasons or whatever have just been a dream.
Did people like that?
I think so. If I'm wrong, someone let me know. Um, Also, there was a sitcom in the '90s that did that. I was it Coach? I can't remember. There was a sitcom in the '90s that famously did it too, and that one was uh, a little more critically panned
Okay,
from what I
okay.
recall.
So what you're saying is that it's possible.
I,
It
yeah,
feels like playing with fire to me.
I'm saying we have to try. Damn it.
Well, sounds like it wasn't successful
No,
in this run.
it's unfortunate too because like the show like really started to hit its stride in the later seasons. I like all of Enterprise to varying degrees, but the show got consistently strong from in the its latter 2 seasons, so
Okay, so you feel like it was getting quite good.
it was getting quite good, yeah. Um, but yeah, so before we get to that though, I mentioned this is the end of Star Trek Tronk month. This episode's going up a few days late. It's actually the beginning of May. So I want to address about that. Uh, Overall, our recording schedule has been a little bit more erratic as of late than it has been in the past like couple of years. We've been doing this, not just this show, but all of the various podcasts that we do. Uh, that is largely my fault, and I'm going to bring this up because I just found out recently that May is Mental Wellness Awareness Month, and it has been
Mental hellness awareness.
mental wellness, uh, mental
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 health
health
awareness
awareness
month.
month.
Rolls off the tongue
Yeah,
effortlessly.
yeah, it really does. My my own personal mental health has been particularly very close to an all-time low as of late, and I'm not going to go into the reasons why, but I'll just say at times they are a changing. So I want to apologize to anyone who listens to this or any of the other shows that we do, to our patron subscribers, because our Patreon content's been a little light for the past month or two, and to my co-host for being kind of unreliable lately.
I think you're being hard on yourself, my dude.
I appreciate you saying that. I'm gonna really want to get, well, for many reasons. I want to get myself better and sorted and all of
I
that.
just
But
got to come over there and shake you out of it.
And maybe like slap me in the
Slap
face.
your eye. Get a hold of yourself, man. Where are your bootstraps? You got to pull yourself up by them.
Uh,
Well, that's your problem. You don't have any bootstraps. Okay, I'm done.
yeah. I know you have problems, but guess what? We all do.
We
Someone
all
I,
do.
someone actually told me that recently, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, huh. It's one of those moments where I wish I could go back and be like, you know what, man, that is extremely uh That is extremely ableist and reductive statement to make, and not very helpful at all for someone who is dealing with stuff. So maybe
Oh,
don't.
everybody's having a hard time. Well, why didn't you say so? Everything just got a lot better.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not. I
Thanks,
haven't.
Grandma, for letting me know there are starving kids in other continents.
Yeah,
Everywhere but ours. Hell, there's even starving children here.
yeah,
I know,
yeah.
Grandma, I'm one of them.
Yeah, I'm not. I've gone on record with this before, but I'm not a big fan of the the line of thinking that your problem, whatever you're going through, doesn't matter because someone somewhere out there has it worse, because someone always does. And I don't like that line of thinking because it's endless. You can
Yeah,
keep applying that logic until you eventually like get to no one, literally no one should be upset about anything because, there are kids out in the world starving somewhere.
because they're exactly
Yeah.
the charging starving children argument.
Yeah.
Every millennial listening to this must have a grandma or like a family member or parent that like pulled
Or
that
a
at least once,
or a boss.
or a boss.
Which interestingly enough, I will not be working there much longer. No. Which I've been talking about on the Patreon preambles lately. So if you're at all curious, go subscribe to Patreon, $5
Yeah, if
tier.
you want to
Go
hear
listen
him
to that.
spill the tea, or if you want to get some dirt on him, yes, because all your coworkers are listening to this.
Oh, undoubtedly. Yeah.
For $5, you can just pay Christopher and I $5 and sift through 150 hours, and you'll get something to
Yeah.
cancel us to get him fired for
Yeah. Yeah.
in his last 3 days of
Yeah, I'm leaving my job next Tuesday, so you have less than a week to make it happen, people.
get on it,
$5. Come at me.
make
Anyway,
multiple accounts.
anyway, this week on the Lasercomb podcast, episode 31 of the old LCP, we are talking about the 39th episode overall of Star Trek Enterprise, Dawn. It originally aired on when did it originally air? January 8th, 2003. A mere 5 days after my 18th birthday.
Wow,
What
special.
what a time to be 18. Um so the episode opens with Commander Trip Tucker. He's the chief engineer. He's in a shuttlecraft. He's doing some science. He gets attacked by an unknown shuttlecraft, and they crash land on this surface
And the
that seems
reason they
like
both crash land is because there's silicates in the atmosphere of the moon or something like that.
yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
interferes with their engines, and they both go down.
it's some blah 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 Star Trek plot setup bullshit blah blah.
Yeah, we both have different references for this episode. Like for me, I'm like, hey, it's Enemy Mine, the Star Trek episode with Enemy Mine with Dennis Quaid. Everyone remember that? And
uh
for you, it's something else.
for me it is the 1968 film Hell in the Pacific, World War II film about an American and a Japanese soldier who I might in the 60s, who I might add was played by a Japanese actor, which was
I'm shocked.
for the time, that's kind of impressive. Because Hollywood like really, and everybody knows this at this point, but Hollywood really liked to whitewash roles until very recently. Um, this episode is basically that movie. It is also the 1980s film Enemy Mine, and it is also the Star Trek: The Next Generation episode Darmok. So if you've seen any or all of those, you know the gist of what's going to happen here.
And the gist being two enemies. They don't speak the same language,
That
hostile to each other. For the necessity of survival, they have to work together to overcome whatever odds they face. And then it shows that bond, or that level of humanity. Well, I guess in Star Trek, you can't use that as a term. It means something
humanity.
else.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you'd be like, oh, they bond, and like they realize that they share like the same like humanity, and it's just like, well, hang on.
They share the same huge manatee.
The huge manatee, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so they crash on the planet. Both of their ships are completely disabled. Uh, Commander Tucker is I don't know if I mentioned, but he's the NX-01 Enterprise chief engineer. And actually, before we get into that, I'm going to talk a little bit more about Enterprise in broad strokes. So what Enterprise
Okay.
was about. Enterprise was a prequel to all of the other Star Trek shows. Now that's kind of basically all Star Trek is doing, but at the time this was kind of novel. It is set about 100 years after Zefram Cochrane, the inventor of the warp drive, played by James Cromwell in the 1996 film Star Trek First Contact. It's set about 100 years after he invented his first warp drive and made first contact with the Vulcans. This is about 100 years later. The United Federation of Planets does not exist yet. So this version of the Enterprise is not a Federation starship. It is a Starfleet ship. The Starfleet exists, but the Federation doesn't. Things get kicked off in the beginning of the series because a Klingon, a species heretofore unknown to the people of Earth, crashes on Earth and ends up getting injured. And so Starfleet decides to launch its first warp factor 5 interstellar ship, the NX-01 Enterprise, on a mission to deliver this injured Klingon back to his homeworld of Kronos, the Klingon home planet. The captain of the ship is played by Scott Bakula, whom I think all of us know from Quantum Leap.
I was going to say, anybody watching that is stuck with us this far, you gotta know Quantum Leap, man. We made Quantum Leap references.
You know,
funny a couple times.
Funny enough, I've never actually seen Quantum Leap. I just know of it.
I think I'm actually surprised by that, because it feels like a you show.
Yeah. So yeah, he plays Captain Jonathan Archer, who is put in command of this ship. I believe his father was the one who actually invented the warp factor 5 drive. So what that means is it's a warp drive that can go to warp 5. And it's the Enterprise is the first ship to be equipped with this drive. And I believe, if I recall correctly, that Captain Archer's father was the one who invented the warp 5 drive.
So when it comes to warp factor, is that just that many times the speed of light, or is there a
It's not the speed of light, because its warp drive doesn't function that way. It's not
right.
Right.
It doesn't make you go fast. It warps space-time.
Yeah. It warps space-time, and well, basically the number, I don't know, it's kind of an arbitrary thing to just be like, oh, we go fast. Go if we're trying to take it easy, it's like, okay, we're gonna head to Starbase 9, warp 1.2, engage. But if it's like, oh shit, the Borg are attacking Earth, warp 9.5, engage. I think it's just a way for the writers to like kind of put in a sense of urgency. So if a ship, if like they're going at like a higher warp drive, then it tells the audience that they need to get there faster.
But then isn't there like Dragon Ball Z power creep,
What
where each show or whatever will like be trying to push that limit? Like, I swear I was watching Voyager one time and they were like, they developed like warp 11,
Yeah,
even though
there
it didn't exist. And oh, that was going to change how fast they could get home by like years.
Star Trek's been kind of inconsistent about it, but um, generally, I think in the during the time of Voyage, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager, I think the fastest warp drive that was possible, like technically possible, given our understanding of how warp technology works. I think warp 9.9 was the fastest you could go. So breaking the warp 10 barrier was this big thing. And I think there was an episode of Voyager where they figured out a way to do it, but then it caused problems because, of course.
Because of course, yeah.
So
Which
yeah,
is yeah. Okay, I was
it's
just wondering if there was an actual speed or if it's arbitrary.
it's largely arbitrary.
Okay.
Uh, yeah. So, like I said, 100 years after First Contact, I think it's still about a century before the original series as well. This is long before the Federation Romulan War. That's only ever been alluded to. It's never actually been
Mm.
depicted on screen.
Nobody wants to depict that. Come on.
Um, the rounding out the cast is uh, Chief Engineer Commander Trip Tucker, who's played by Connor Trenier, who would end up going on to have a regular recurring role as a pretty neat character named Michael in Stargate Atlantis.
Mm.
He was a wraith that they figured out a way to extract like they figured out that wraiths were like a mixture between at a very like early evolutionary level were kind of a mixture between like primates and this like certain type of bug, and they figured out how to like separate the like the bug DNA from them, and so they turned him back into a human, but and wiped his memory. But then he started figuring out who he was, and then got really bitter, and then kind of sort of turned back. So he ended up being this human wraith hybrid who like knew all this shit about Stargate, about the Atlantis expedition. He ended up becoming one of the big bads of
Weird.
that series. Yeah, it was fun. I like that show. You have what's her name? Linda Park as Ensign Hoshi Saito, who is a translator. She was a school teacher on Earth that Captain Archer recruited because she is apparently the like best linguistics person on the planet or something.
Fancy. But don't they have like universal translators?
They do, but she has to program it.
It
So
sounds like a so every time they encounter someone new, wait, how's that possible? She would need to learn an alien language.
they're the universe there are episodes of Enterprise where like they meet an alien that the universal translator doesn't work, and
Okay.
she has to kind of like big brain and figure out like the basics of how their language works, and then she can use that to program the universal translator, and eventually by the end of the
Okay.
episode the
Okay.
universal translator will work.
So that is a theme. So one of the themes of Enterprise, it sounds like, um, is
Exploration
dealing
and
exploration.
and exploration and dealing with new people and new situations. Another Sergeant Reed is the or Lieutenant Reed rather is the he's actually I don't even think he's in this episode. He's
It's basically just Trip.
yeah he is the he is the chief security officer on the ship. The first officer on the ship is Sub Commander T'Pol, a Vulcan, who was put
Mm.
on the ship as a basically a mandate by the Vulcans. The Vulcans are like, "Hey, we don't think you're ready to be like traveling the galaxy in a warp factor 5 ship, like just going off on your own. So the only way we're going to allow you to do this is if you take one of our like high-ranking like science officers and have her as the first officer on the ship." So and which ends up
So
creating
what
like
you're saying, she's a narc.
it ends up creating an interesting power dynamic, especially in the first season. As the show goes on, Archer and T'Pol end up having a much less adversarial relationship and end up like cooperating and working together. There's also Travis, who is well, the least interesting character on the show, and he is also not in this episode from what I recall. And then there's my favorite character, Dr. Phlox, the chief medical officer, a very pleasant Denobulan, race of people called the Denobulans.
Yeah, there's one in Voyager.
I
think. Is that the same race? Or is that a slightly different race?
Slightly different race. I think the Denobulans were introduced in Enterprise.
Yeah, I remember. Sorry, I got them confused for a second. I'm thinking of Neelix.
Oh yeah. No, they're not the same race.
No, he's got 3 mohawks going on.
3 times the fun.
That's right.
But yeah, Dr. Phlox is my favorite character in the whole show.
He seemed fun, but he's in this episode for like a hot minute.
He is, and I kind of wish we had landed on an episode that was much more of an ensemble, but this is very much just Trip's story, which is all right because I like Trip as a character.
He grew on me really quick. And anyone listening, if it hasn't become obvious, I've never watched Enterprise. And going into this, I was like, oh boy, here we go. But you know what? No, I like Trip. I liked the episode.
So basically what happens in this episode is where we left off was Trip Tucker and this alien guy whose name was, what was it? Zocon. You don't mess with the Zocon.
I was gonna say you don't mess with the Zocon.
Like 5 people listening to this got that joke.
I understood that reference. I too used to watch Adam Sandler movies.
I too worked at Blockbuster in 2008, and that's the only reason I'm aware of that movie's existence.
Unfortunately, true. But Zocon. He's a hairdresser, and he's stuck on the planet with Trip.
Yeah, they're stuck on this moon, and their ships are trashed. Both of their ships are trashed. Up above on Enterprise, the race, this guy is an Arconian. That's right.
Right, and even humans haven't interacted with them yet.
Yeah, so this is a first contact situation.
The Vulcans have.
Yeah. So the Arconian ship shows up, and they're like, "Hey, you guys, get the fuck out of here." And Archer's like, "Well, one of our people was on a shuttlecraft, and it was shot down by one of your ships. And so we're not leaving until we figure out where our missing man is." And the other captain's like, "Well, if he encountered one of my people, then he's already dead."
Then he's dead.
And Archer, and he just keeps insisting that they leave. And Archer's like, "No, motherfucker, not going anywhere. I need to find my dude."
And to give him credit, he's like, "Hey, listen, you're looking for a guy. We're looking for a guy.
There's 64 habitable moons in this area, because that's something that T'Pol mentioned. 62 of them.
A whole lot of moons.
And he's like, there's 62 of them. We could search a hell of a lot faster if we pool our resources and
find our guys."
And on the planet's surface, Trip like sneaks over to Zocon's little crash site, and he's like, he had a campfire going, and he carries this thing out, and it looks like a dinner tray. And initially, I kind of laughed because I was like, "Oh, I like that Trip is going over to spy on this guy, and this guy's just making dinner."
Yeah, he's not doing science. He's
just
cooking something up.
He's just cooking something up.
He's just a dude, you know?
Yeah.
Hey, he's just like us.
But no, he so the thing that the serving tray that he carried out was actually like some like piece of his ship that's completely trashed. And so he has this like laser like tripwire thing, like laser sensor, and Trip like notices it and like blows on it and drops
right
drops some dust on it.
And I'm like, just
S-
go
s-
around it.
See, you say Mission Impossible. I was thinking Solid Snake with the pack of cigarettes.
I should have went there first. I apologize.
uh,
But the thing is, he trips, and that's how he sees it. He trips before he like touches it,
yeah,
because no, he's crawling around on the ground trying to get like a better look, and like he stirs up some dust, and that's how he sees it, right?
yeah. So he sees the serving tray that the guy is fucking around with, and Tucker decides to basically play decoy. He puts like a little communication device, a recording device of him talking, and what he's saying is
Oh,
just like completely like Mary had a little lamb and stuff like that, because he notes that he didn't bring a universal translator with him, so
mhm.
he has no way of talking to the Zocan. I keep wanting to call him Zohan.
Well,
Um,
unfortunately, this guy
well,
is a little bit cooler than Zohan.
the guy temporarily falls for it, and he goes and investigates. And Tucker like goes and tries to like steal the like serving tray, or he's like trying to do some work on it to figure out what's wrong with it.
He steals his science.
He steals his science, and I I was kind of wondering like what his plan here was, but I don't
It's to
know.
steal the science and use it back at his shuttle so he can, backtrack the science and
Back
get out
back
of here.
backtrack that ass up.
Yeah. Backtrack that Zocan,
uh,
Zocan can.
the Zocan can.
Yeah.
Uh, so
Zocan can.
so
I'm going crazy.
the Zocan
They fight a lot,
yeah, the
people.
Zocan doesn't fall for this clever ruse of Tucker's very long. So they fight for a bit. Zocan like takes Trip hostage, or takes him prisoner, and like starts getting him to work on his ship. And there's
Yeah,
an
he
immediate.
got the drop on him and he's working on his ship. And I'm like, dude, he's human. Bring him to his ship. He'll know how to fix it better than he could fix your ship.
And I kind of wonder why he just automatically assumed that Tucker was an engineer of any sort at all. Maybe it's because he was
Good
fucking around.
point.
Maybe it's because he saw him like fucking around with the serving tray.
That's what I was thinking, because he's like, oh, well, maybe this guy actually knows what he's doing, because it seems like Zokan doesn't. He's just a fighter,
Yeah, he's just a
a pilot.
soldier dude.
Yeah. And so he has no idea what he's doing. And you're
Yeah,
right, though. Why it's weird that he assumed that
yeah, he
Trip
just
would be able to, mechanic his way with this ship, but
through alien technology.
I guess he kind of does.
They slowly start kind of figuring out how to communicate with one another, and Trip is able to ask him for some water. They figure out how to what each other's names are,
Yeah.
and Trip asks him for some water by like gesturing, like hitting his
Go
chest,
go
and then
go go.
gesturing
Yeah.
like drinking a glass. And so Zokan throws him a can. He's like, "Oh, all right." Throws him a canteen, and Trip like goes to take a drink of it, and just like spits it out and
And
throws it on the
throws it
on
on
the
the
ground,
ground.
and it's like this brown sludge.
And Zokan freaks out because
That
he shared but little. Obviously, they don't drink water, they drink something else.
Yeah, and later on, like Trip tries to share like a chocolate bar or something with him, and he just doesn't like it at all. So obviously, their like physiologies for like sustenance are completely different from one
Yeah.
another,
Yeah.
which makes sense. One thing that Zokan does that I think is kind of cool in this episode is like his gesture for yes isn't like nodding. It's like kind of twitching his head to the right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it,
Like a
it's interesting. I like little like attentions to
little
detail about
lizard
that.
movements. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
near the end of it, like Trip realizes that this side head gesture is in agreement rather
Yeah.
than like shaking your head.
Yeah.
And that is kind of, that's one of the interesting parts of the episode, is that, like, we take for granted this means yes and this means no, but that's not the same throughout like human history at
Yeah,
all.
it's not even necessarily the same throughout like all human cultures, let alone like
No,
completely alien cultures.
no.
Um,
So I thought that was cool. Good for them for doing something different.
Trip kind of freaks out and is like, "I can't fix this thing," and he's like, "Hey, like, come over here. You gotta
I'll
check this
come and
out."
show you. Ha ha. I try. You trusted me. And he sprays acid in his face.
Yeah, he
Cool.
sprays like stuff on his face.
Yeah,
Oh,
he
and at
sprays
one
like
point,
coolant or something.
yeah, cooling. Oh, and at one point, Trip like cuts himself, cuts his arm, and then Zokan like grabs his arm and just like spits all over it, and his spit like magically heals it.
He's got like web fluid,
Yeah,
because it's kind of like sticky, like Spider-Man's web fluid. But yeah, he like jizzes out of his mouth all over Trip's open wound. And he's like, "Oh, what the hell are you doing?" And like before his eyes, it heals up and closes.
yeah, and
That's that's a huge game changer.
yeah, and it's shown later too that it can also be used to harm as well because he Zokan like sprays him in the eyes with it later on.
The jizz giveth and the jizz taketh away.
Uh, yeah, and so yeah, like I said, Trip repays his generosity and his favor here by like splashing like coolant on him, and he gets the his like phase pistol away from him, and then he ties Zokan up, and
And
they
my, how the turns have tabled, Zokan.
they 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 go to Trip's shuttle. Because Trip has decided he wants to use this like big like relay thing from Zokan's ship and like use it as a power source for his shuttle's communicators. Um, he
So
try
power
he,
source plus his communicators. And because there's so much silicate
in
in the
the app
atmosphere, they have to
and
increase
be
their,
well, and specifically because they're near the like magnetic field of a volcano because of all the
right, they got to
volcanoes around.
move. Yeah.
So they got to move. They got to get to higher ground. And so Trip tries to explain this to Zokan, and he thinks he gets through to him. He's like gesturing, like me and you work together, like take this up there,
He even
yada
takes
yada.
the gun, which is Okan's, and he's like, see?
And he tosses it away, and
And it's
so
quite clear that it's like, okay, he's trying to be friends.
and so
And
he
the second Zokan is cut loose, he's
second
like,
he
fuck
unties him.
you,
He's like,
and
fuck you.
immediately attacks him.
He immediately attacks him. He fucking like spears him and delivers a fucking rock style.
Spear, spear.
Well, he spears him and then turns it into like a rock style spine buster.
Yeah.
And what actually ends up happening, that they end up brawling for a while. I actually really like this fight.
So did I.
It was a
felt
surprise.
real.
Yeah, it was a surprisingly realistic looking fight. Right, even right down to the fact that they only fought for like a minute or two, and then both just were worn out. Because
Yeah.
uh, to anyone out there who has never been in a fight and has only seen fights in movies, you get tired real fast. Like,
Especially when you're not an active like person in boxing or martial arts.
yeah,
Hell, or if you are, you know how tired you get. There's a reason why like boxing rounds are 3 minutes.
yeah. Most like regular fights between like just ordinary people usually only last like a minute or two.
Yeah.
Because someone gets taken out or like someone gets worn out or like both parties
Or
get
someone
worn out.
gets hurt and
Yeah.
they just don't want none of that. So yeah, it's a slobber knocker between Zokan and Trip. And they're
And
trying to get the gun. They're dropping like the people's elbow. They're exhausted.
Trip delivers a stone cold stunner.
Stunner.
And that's what
Zokan kicks out though before the 3 count. And,
and
yeah,
then
they're
he
just kind of
and then he starts
against each other.
and then he starts to like hulk up and like walk around the canyon like shaking, and then delivers the atomic leg drop.
Yeah.
But no, it was actually a really like authentic fight that I dug.
And I feel like that was a very like universally like masculine, like man to man like moment, like fighting it out.
Yeah,
Because after that, Trip gets the gun and again he tosses it aside. He's like,
he tosses it like
okay.
too like so far out of
Oh, this time it's up in
away.
the mountain
Yeah,
somewhere. Yeah. And he's like, okay, do you want to come at me again?
yeah,
Or do you want to like help me? So
yeah. We
they
can
fought it out, folks.
we can go another round if you want, or you can help me carry this shit up the mountain.
Yeah. And Trip and the crew back on the Enterprise are realizing the days can get pretty hot on this here moon.
Yeah, T'Pol mentions that that on the various moons in this system that at night, which they crash landed on this moon when it was nighttime,
Mhm.
it can get to like down to like -5, -10 degrees. I'm not sure if it's Fahrenheit or Celsius or not. Uh, Star Trek uses Celsius a lot in most of the time in the shows, but because they were mentioning like 100 later on in the episode, they mentioned it was like 130. I'm guessing it's probably Fahrenheit because as
Or 130 Celsius.
well, 100, well, a person would be cooked alive long before 100 it got to
Well, it's
130
30
Celsius.
degrees past the boiling point of water,
Yeah, yeah.
which humans have.
Yeah. You would be long dead, like
That's
long
why
before it
when
ever
it was
got that
like
hot.
getting hot, I was like,
So,
it's not a matter of them just like, sticking in the shade. Like they're
yeah.
gonna be very dead.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's Fahrenheit. But yeah, so Archer is like, "Oh, -5, that doesn't sound so bad." And T'Pol's like, "Yeah, but in the day it gets up to 170." And he's like, "Ooh.
Ugh.
Oh,
So
let's
like
hope
what,
that
SPF 170? Do you think Trip
SP
has that?
SPF 1 million.
SPF 1 million? Just be like Arnold from Predator and just cake yourself in mud.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Uh, uh,
SPF infinity. Just
so he
clay.
so he's like, well, hopefully they crash landed on the dark side of the moon, on the dark side of the moon.
Hmm.
Uh,
And yeah, what's the Vulcan's name? T'Pol?
T'Pol, yeah,
T'Pol's like, I don't get that reference.
and
Explain, human.
Archer's like, we're gonna need to replicate at least a quarter, at least a quarter ounce, before I
Join
can
me on this journey.
before I can explain this to you. Set the
we're
entire
gonna
evening aside.
we're gonna need like a prism, so something about rainbows. Don't worry about it.
We're gonna need a lava lamp, some blacklight posters.
Yeah.
um, so down on the planet,
I ran out of Pink Floyd references, jokes to make. So sorry, back on the.
I only know like 3 of their songs off the top of my head anyway, and I don't think any of them are from that album.
I have
Uh,
the album in my car.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Sweet.
I don't remember what the songs are called. Because I just listened to it from front to end. So it kind of feels just like one big saga.
So back down on the moon, Trip is trying to they get to the point that they need to get to, and Trip like sets the thing up, and he's like trying to radio Enterprise, and a bunch of time goes by, like nothing, they don't get through, and
They're
they're
sweating, Trip's naked.
Trip sweating to the oldies. Zokan is like slowly like on the verge of passing out. Tucker delivers a log, and he records a log and is like, yeah, so I don't think my buddy over here has any sweat glands, so it's no bueno for him, especially for him over there.
He's just kind of sleeping and trying to hide in like the tiniest plant. The
I
tiniest
felt
plant is giving some shade.
I felt so bad for him in that scene, like when he's just like very slowly dying, like he like kind of
He's dying for the
he like
last 10 minutes of the episode.
he like slowly like crawls forward and like puts his face behind this tiny little bush. I felt so bad for the guy.
Like barely, like I guess those few blades of grass are gonna give some shade.
It's better than nothing, I guess.
And
Not much
Trip
better,
is
but
like pouring the last of his canteen
his
into
canteen
his mouth.
of shit water, yeah.
I
And
really liked that camaraderie.
he's like helping him drink it, and because he's so weak. They finally radio through to Enterprise, and they're like, "Hooray!" But Captain, because of the silicates in the atmosphere, don't send a shuttle down. And Captain's like, "No problem. We'll use the transporter." Which, uh, in Enterprise, they didn't usually use the transporters for people because they weren't. Uh, it wasn't in Federation regulations at this point to transport people. You could transport supplies and weapons and basically any even animals, but humans weren't really cleared to be transported.
It makes it bigger, it makes interesting obstacles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
I was gonna ask about that. Yeah.
and one of the reasons why they did that, the writers of the show did that, was because they they didn't want to always be able to have the transporter just be a like fix all problem. They wanted to have
It's a more
episode.
interesting
They wanted to have
problem
episodes
to not
where
rely on it.
where characters were like stranded on planets and whatnot, and they had to like get shuttles to them just to create
Like
more
this.
drama. Yeah.
But it's for a different reason.
Um, Dr. Phlox mentions that because the Arconian is so dehydrated, transporting him would probably kill him.
Though,
And so,
and you know how you said their physiology is a little bit different?
yeah,
It has something to do with their physiology reacting different, and it would make them sick or something, but because he's so dehydrated, it'll probably kill him.
they'll probably kill him. So Archer's like, "Okay, Trip, you got to leave your buddy down there, but we're gonna beam you back up." And Trip, and I really liked this, was like, "No can do. I'm not leaving him." And Archer's like, "Wait, come,
What?
come on! Like we're gonna get you out of there. We'll let his people like figure it out." And he's like, "Nah, man, I'm not leaving him to die alone." And so he's like, one of our shuttles can't get down here, but I had a look at the Arconian shuttle, and I think if you like modify the blah 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 blah,
Because he had been working on it so long.
yeah, if you modify the whatever, one of their shuttles can get down. And then there's just radio silence for a while, like and eventually the sun ends up like cooking the equipment essentially, so it doesn't work anymore. And then just as they're both about to die, Tucker is like giving like a bit of a monologue to himself, saying about
Oh,
how
is he doing like a log?
no, I think he was just talking. I think he was just talking to himself or
Well, there's
talking
one
to.
point he's making a log and he turns to Zakan and he's like, "Do you got anything to say?"
Yeah. I briefly touched on him
Yeah,
recording the log earlier.
right.
No, I think he's just talking to himself or talking to Zokon.
That he's kind man.
He gives
What a man to make
he-
to make to be okay to face death like that.
Yeah, he gives a little monologue, being like, I did all these great things. I did this, I saw this, I saw this, and I wouldn't trade any of it for anything. And just in the nick of time, the an Arconian shuttle shows up and saves them. And so they're back on Enterprise, and the captain of the Arconian ship is brought into Archer's quarters by T'Pol, and he
Yeah, and
asks,
he's like, "You got a Vulcan on this ship, buddy?"
"Yeah, oh yeah, I guess I'll
Oh,
touch
that
on
was a
that.
point of right.
Yeah, so the Arconians don't like the Vulcans because about 100 years earlier, which would have been around the same time they made first contact with Earth, but they made first contact with the Arconians, and T'Pol mentions that while humans were very open to sharing technology and culture and being like following the Vulcans' lead and like looking to them for guidance, the Arconians weren't, and their relationship degraded to the point that they now just hate them. So the Arconian captain asks how they're doing, how his soldier is doing, and Archer is like, fine, like he's good there, and he should be ready to go like real soon. And then the Arconian actually asks how Tucker is doing. Archer tells him that, you know, like he's tired and sunburned, but he'll also be fine. And the Arconian captain is like, I expect you to leave, you know, as promised. He's like, don't worry, we will. And T'Pol tells Archer that things went a lot better than she expected, and that with spending one day dealing with the Arconians, Archer made more progress with them than the Vulcans did in an entire century.
Sucks to suck, Vulcans.
I
mean, they're not a very friendly.
No, they're not. They're very smug. They're very superior. Like I could see how a lot of races would be rubbed the wrong way by them. Mm-hmm. But this is one of the things that I really like about this show and Star Trek in general, but especially this show. Like this show often ends on very like hopeful notes like that.
As someone who didn't watch the show, that little bit there, that exchange with the like you said, the Arconian even cared about Trip. Because I mean, when they picked them up, he had seen that they'd been working together. They combined their like technologies. They were both trying to get out of that situation, right? And the discussion with T'Pol, that was heartwarming, and I was like, yeah, that's right, go humans.
It was a very, for me, it was a very uplifting scene, and it's one of the things I like about this show. Is a lot of episodes of the show like will end on that kind of hopeful note.
Yeah.
So
there's a little bit in the med bay.
Yeah, there is a little kind of epilogue in sick bay where Tucker goes to see Zokon, and he asks Dr. Phlox like, "Oh, how's he doing?" And Dr. Phlox is like, "Well, ask him yourself. The universal translator is working." And Zokon says a word to him, and Tucker is like, hey Doc, I don't think it's working." And the guy is like, no, you promised me, blah blah. He's like, oh right, you're like sludge water, right? I'll
replicate you up some right away.
I'll get that for you right away. Also, the chef is making chicken tonight. You want some of that? And he's like,
chicken tonight. Some chicken tonight.
Do you feel like chicken tonight?
Like chicken
like
tonight?
Chicken tonight.
And he's like, sludge water.
All right.
Okay.
I'll get that for you right away.
And then as he's walking away, though, he's like, Trip. Thanks, man.
What he says is, Trip, when I shot your shuttle down, I am grateful that it was not destroyed. And again, like that's a really like feel
two
good
in a
moment.
row. Yeah. And that's what won me over. Yeah, because even though it was paint by numbers all episode, right? Like
I mean, it's hell in the Pacific. It's as we mentioned, it's hell in the Pacific. It's Enemy Mine. It's the Next Generation episode of Darmok.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really do anything new, but I still enjoyed it.
But the way they do it, the humanity and the very few lines we understand from Zokon, and that little bit with the two captains at the
Yeah.
end, that that was worth it. I dig it.
Uh, Cal, after randomly watching episode 39 of Star Trek Enterprise, would you watch another? Would you tune in next week?
You know what? I will tune in next week. I I enjoyed it. I like it when things are happy. I like it when there are wins, right?
Right?
Like not everything has to have this. Star Trek has a great history of just like I I guess that's all we can do,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they go to the next system, and so seeing such a win like that and camaraderie and that, I don't know, I dig it.
Yeah,
Got a soft spot for it.
I'm gonna echo all of that. And I definitely would tune in next week because well, I did back 20 years ago watching this show.
Yep,
Um, I
you're on
am
board.
I'm an unup I've been beamed on board for the past 20 years, 21 years now. I've been an unapologetic fan of Star Trek Enterprise. So my hot take on the Star Trek franchise as a whole: Deep Space Nine, not that great. Enterprise, uneven at times, but overall pretty great. That theme song that everyone hates, fucking great song. Faith of the Heart, I love it.
I like how you used that chance to just dunk on Deep Space Nine, even though it had nothing to do with.
Well, and speaking of dunking on things, I mentioned on the last episode of the podcast that as kind of a postscript to Star Trek month, I was gonna talk about a little bit about the newer Star Trek shows because one of the rules of the Lasercomb podcast is whatever show we cover, it has to be a show that's completed its run.
Yeah,
And the reason for that is just because like I like to roll I like to roll a random episode based on the total episode count, and I don't if the show's still going, then that could change. The total episode count's gonna change, and then
and besides, we want to cover more stuff other than things that are running.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so that's one of the rules of the Lasercomb podcast is it can't be we don't cover shows that are currently airing. So hence why we're ending with Star Trek here. But there are currently several Star Trek shows going. The series after Enterprise ended in I think it was May of 2005. The franchise left television for 12 years. It was in movies for a while. There was that 2009 J.J. Abrams Star Trek reboot, which is a pretty fun movie, fun but kind of dumb. But we touched a little bit on that. You know, uh,
I
uh,
know that when I see a clone of Khan on screen, I'm looking for a gangly, tall, white dude. But
well, we
Eggs
touched.
Benedict Cucumber Patch was hot shit at the time, okay?
Well, I mean, he still is. Like, guy's
Yeah,
Doctor Strange now. But
yeah.
yeah, no, that 2009 Star Trek reboot's pretty fun. Great cast. Um,
Wasn't there another one?
we dunked on the fact that early on in that movie we see Kirk as like a 9-year old like
Oh, I
joyriding in like a
forgot.
1960s like car like Corvette in the like 20
I
in
will
the
never get
20
over
in the
that.
23rd century listening to Sabotage by the Beastie Boys, which is
As someone
dumb.
who for like intermittently listens to Beastie Boys now, like what? Like I'm one of like 12 people who might go, "Hey, Beastie Boys popped up on my playlist. I'll let it play." But like
Yeah.
why, like you had said, why would like a child
Why
be
would a child like 300 years from now be listening to a random song from the 1980s?
and like we had spoken about, children now don't even listen to random songs from the 80s.
That's true.
And out of all hip hop, a lot of people don't like Google classic hip hop and go, "You know what? I don't like a lot of it, but these Beastie Boys fellas."
Right.
They're kind of fire. I mean, I still listen to them, so whatever.
That movie was followed up by in 2013 with Star Trek Into Darkness. I saw that movie in theaters on my honeymoon.
Is that with Nero and
No,
the
Nero,
red fluid? Ooh, the red fluid.
the red matter. Yeah, the red matter. That was from the first Star Trek reboot
Oh, that's
movie.
the first one.
Yeah, yeah. The red matter. This very nebulous stuff that just makes things go boom.
It's red matter. Look out. Also something to do with space and time. Nobody
Yep.
knows.
But yeah, 2013 Star Trek Into Darkness. I remember following the production of that film quite closely, and everyone being like, "Yeah, Benedict Cumberbatch, he's totally playing Khan," and they kept being like, "He's not Khan." And then in the movie, there's this scene where Benedict Cumberbatch's character is like locked behind a cell, and he's like, "My name is Khan," and it's delivered with this like dramatic gravitas, but because this movie is a prequel, um, and these characters have never met Khan Noonien Singh before, the moment it like falls flat on its face.
It's just to dangle member berries in front of like the Gen X. Like, oh, remember Khan? Well, here he is, but he's young. Member berries. Eat them up. You like them, don't you?
And they decide to that movie like the problem with that movie was feels like it was written by people who know that Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan, is like almost everyone's favorite Star Trek movie, but they don't really know why.
That's the best uh like one sentence description of that movie I've ever heard.
The
The
great
writers know everybody likes The Wrath of Khan, but they don't know why. But
they,
let's recreate that magic anyway.
but let's try anyway. Now, Wrath of what one of the two things that are really great about Wrath of Khan. One, it is a submarine movie in space. It's very much a submarine movie. Um, uh,
It's
like
following up an original series.
Um, and two, like the crux of that story, like at its very core, is that story is about aging and reconciling with your past mistakes. The fact that it's Kirk's birthday is important to the plot, and he's getting old. They're talking about decommissioning the Enterprise. He's like grappling with the fact that he's aging. Um, there's a little bit of symbolism, I think, to the fact that McCoy gives him this antique pair of glasses with no lenses in them as a birthday gift. Like, there's some symbolism there, I think. Um, and then all of a sudden, this character, Khan, who's a villain from an original series episode where Kirk did something very unethical and marooned an entire crew of people just because they were a problem. He marooned them on a planet and was like, "See you later, fuckers." And now this like mistake that he made in his youth has now come back to haunt him. That's what Wrath of Khan is about, and that's why that movie is so great. And I feel like the people who wrote Star Trek Into Darkness didn't get that.
Yeah, because they're like, well, here are these superhuman clones, but instead of establishing anything to make them important to the plot, they just get loose. Oh, they're super smart and super strong and fast. Oh, look out.
Yeah, they
But
got
like that's
superpowers, and they're actually like pawns for an evil Federation admiral who has developed this like super like starship using like illegal
right.
technology. Yeah, it's so that movie is a mess. And then Kirk dies at the end instead of Spock. So they reverse that, and
Right. That's okay.
Spock yells out the whole like Khan thing. But then they use Khan's blood because his blood is so super powered. They use Khan's blood to resurrect Kirk.
I forgot about that. Because like these are such angelic, like perfect beings that their blood can purge the body of dead cells and
Of death.
radiation
Yeah.
of just death. Just
Of just
a
death.
magic potion that brings you back to life.
Yeah.
But let alone like brain
Yeah,
death or any of that. It just regenerates everything. So Kirk comes back as a zombie. And
yeah,
it's like, hear me out. Maybe let these super people rule humanity. Probably would be better off. Also, their blood's magic and can bring people back to life.
yeah.
I don't see the problem
Maybe
here.
we should cooperate with them and maybe harness some of that power to like
Or just fight them. I guess that's good too.
yeah. It is such a dumb movie. Um, that was followed up in 2016 with a movie called Star Trek Beyond that was directed by Justin Lin. J.J. Abrams didn't return to direct that one.
I did not see this. And
It's
I'm
fine.
only now remembering that it exists.
It's fine. It feels like an episode that one was actually written by Simon Pegg, who plays Scotty in those movies, and
Yeah.
he's a big Star Trek nerd. It feels like an episode of Star Trek. But the problem is it feels like an
I
episode of
forgot he
Star
plays
Trek.
Scotty. Yeah.
The problem is it feels like an episode of a TV show of Star Trek. It feels like a random TV episode of Star Trek. It doesn't feel cinematic at all.
Ah, a
Um,
stretched out episode of
yeah,
a three-parter, four-parter, if you will.
it's a similar problem to the Star Trek Next Generation cast film, Star Trek Insurrection. It just feels like an extended episode of the show.
Hmm.
There's a lot of Enterprise references though in Star Trek Beyond, which is cool. In fact, they find a downed NX-01 class ship, which is my favorite model of Starfleet vessel. It's the
How dare
model.
you?
It's the model of the Enterprise from the titular series Star Trek Enterprise.
So what else is running? Yeah, sorry. And then a year later.
Then a year later, the movie franchise has been on hiatus for quite a while now. Although apparently, there's been some traction, and apparently they're going to get to work this summer on actually shooting the fourth Star Trek reboot film.
Oh,
They've been it's been kind of in development hell for years, but it seems like it's actually happening now. So that's how things work in Hollywood. Things languish in development hell for so long, and then all of a sudden things just start happening. But in 2017, a show premiered on a streaming service called CBS All Access called Star Trek Discovery. That show kind of ditched the ensemble format of previous Star Trek shows and decided to focus on a character named Michael Burnham, played by I can never remember her name, but she was in The Walking Dead for a while. That show is also heavily serialized. It ditches the episodic format, which is fine. That the serialized TV has been
and
in
what's that
for
called?
Star Trek Discovery. Serialized TV has been quite in for quite a while now, so I'm fine with that. For some reason, they redesigned the Klingons, even though, oh yeah, Discovery is set 10 years before the original series, but they completely redesigned the Klingons um, for reasons that aren't explained in the plot. And in fact, there was such backlash about it in season 2 of Star Trek Discovery. They changed the design of the Klingons again to make them look more like traditional Klingons, and it just isn't mentioned in the plot at all why they suddenly look different twice over now. Um, Discovery's a
Huh.
mix. Discovery is such a mixed bag.
Yeah, I'm
Like,
looking at the change because one people could be all like, well, we wanted to make them look more alien rather than just like, an angry brown race.
right.
Maybe that's the reason.
Well, and in the original series, if you remember, the Klingons just looked like humans. In fact, they were kind of based on the racist Fu Manchu stereotype originally
Oh, from the original series. Yeah,
from the original.
they were just dudes. Yeah, with Fu
Uh,
Manchus.
yeah, and actually, in the fourth season of Enterprise, they tried to explain why the Klingons look different in the original series versus
Oh,
why they did in Next Generation. And funny enough, it involves like one of Dr. Soong, the creator of Data it involves one of his ancestors, who of course is played by Brent Spiner, because Brent Spiner plays every single one of Dr. Soong's ancestors throughout history.
Of course, he has to. They all look exactly the same.
Oh, look, exactly. He even pops up in season 2 of Star Trek Picard as yet another
You gotta
ancestor of
milk
Dr. Soong.
you gotta milk everyone's favorite characters, favorite actors from all of Star Trek for as much as you can.
I have two big problems with Star Trek Discovery. One, technology. It's set 10 years before the original series. The technology is is very futuristic, like hologram screens and like Minority Report, like moving your hands around. It's like kind of
Whatever
technology.
happened to buttons, man?
Kind of technology you didn't see in the
So
original
it's like
series.
Iron Man HUDs with
Yeah. And it's all just like really glossy and super futuristic looking, which, like, I get it. You don't want to make things look as shitty as they did in the original series, but like, I feel like Enterprise handled it kind of well, because like to circle back to Enterprise real quick, I really like the fact that the interior of the ships kind of just look like the interiors of like a battleship.
and they just made yeah, I was gonna say like it's
And
looks like a battleship.
and like even their uniforms are very reminiscent of like modern like NASA uniforms, which is cool.
I liked it. Thought they did a good job.
But yeah, that's one of my big problems with Discovery, is that the technology is like way beyond anything we've seen in any previous Star Trek show, even though it's supposed to be set 10 years before the original series.
Well, you know how it is.
The other thing is, I had mentioned that they ditched the ensemble format in favor, like, it still is a big ensemble cast, but like there is very much a central character in Commander Michael Burnham. And the problem is this character constantly is fucking things up throughout the show. And she doesn't learn from her mistakes. And instead, she always gets rewarded for them. And people keep putting her in charge, even though every single time they do, she screws it up. And I've heard people online make that argument about Kirk. It's way worse with Burnham. And yeah, I've Discovery is up
Isn't it a weird model? Be like, have this person keep making mistakes, but
and like
you know, just like tap them on the shoulder and be like, you'll get them next time, kid.
and they like almost literally never succeed, and like even after they fuck something up, it's like, oh, you like completely like fucked half the galaxy, but here, have command of the starship now. It's yours. Take it. I'm sure you won't you won't screw something else up next season.
It's a weird thing that they would write. Like why?
Yeah, I think they're just trying to make her more flawed and relatable, but she's flawed to the point of being like, I don't believe anyone would ever put any faith in this person.
But well, not only that, but like these are like $1 trillion ships. Like more than just lives are at the line here. And like
Well,
there's
money doesn't exist at this point in the future in Star Trek.
Right. We're utopian where
We work
everybody
to
has
ourselves.
money and right. But
well,
like, aren't there a million people waiting on the sidelines to take the same job?
Well,
like this, no, there's not.
I mean, you have an entire Federation fleet full of ships.
But I mean, there's nobody where it's like you screw up so much, like that somebody else is like going to take your position. Yeah.
I see what you mean. Yeah. And again, that's one of my big problems with Discovery. It's up to season 4 now. I think season 4 is currently airing. I only watched up to the end of season 3, and
I didn't even know this was a show, I gotta say.
Season 3 had a great finale. Season 3 had a finale that actually, weirdly, and I was talking with someone from work about this. Season 3 had a finale that felt like a series finale. So we were speculating that I wonder if they wrote this finale as like a way of like bookending the show in case they didn't get renewed for a 4th season.
Just in case.
just in case, because it very much felt like an end of it would have been a perfectly fine series finale.
Hmm.
There's also Star Trek Picard, which is a show that I was very. It's currently airing. It's a show I was very hesitant about because I'm like, when they announced it, I'm like, so is this just going to be a show about old man Picard in episodes of Next Generation where we would see flash forwards into the future of Picard just being an old man living on a vineyard? Is this just going to be a show of all that, of just
I
that?
hope so.
Because that doesn't sound terribly interesting to me.
And
Indeed,
he
it starts
gardens
there.
and he drinks wine.
Uh, Season one of Picard started off really strong and actually introduced some like really like big like holy shit things. Like, whoa, wow, these are interesting ideas. Cool. I never would have expected that. But then the show like completely like goes off the rails by the end of the first season and gets like really, really fucking dumb, especially in that
Oh,
finale.
I have a friend, and he's a big Trekkie, and he's like currently going through all of it. And yeah, he was just talking about Picard, and he's like, "My God, this is bad." And I'm like,
See,
"Uh oh,
season two of
don't
season
tell
two
Siege that."
season two of Picard is a huge improvement over season one. I've been enjoying season two. Season two is also like kind of a mixed bag as well, but season two is a massive improvement over season one.
And that's still going.
Yeah, that's still going. It's been they're going to end it after season three. It's planned to end after season three, and season three is actually going to bring back all of the core Next Generation cast as like main cast members, which I'm pretty excited about. And I
That'd
feel
be pretty
like
cool.
I feel like they chose to end it at season three because like they're like, hey, look, we got this show called Star Trek Picard, and Patrick Stewart ain't getting any younger, so we better end it while we're ahead.
It's like, hey, we got to milk Sir Patrick Stewart for as much as he's worth before we can't anymore. Before we're gonna have to recreate his image with CG,
It
because
is
he'll
it,
inevitably pop up as a hologram.
oh hey, we could just bring Tom Hardy back as like the young Picard clone again, right? Wait, he's too expensive now. Okay, never
Oh,
mind.
how much? Really? Wow, go him.
One of his early roles was in the movie 2002 film Star Trek Nemesis, where he played a evil clone of Picard named Shinzon.
All right. Yeah, I've seen screenshots, and I was
Um,
like, is that a clone?
yeah,
If you
yeah,
say so.
he was the likeness was convincing. Is what I'll say. Uh,
Okay.
uh, then there's also on at this point now too. CBS All Access has since been renamed to Paramount Plus.
Yeah.
Because every streaming service is like something plus now. I'm surprised they didn't name HBO Max HBO Plus.
Yeah.
You
Plus
got
is where
like
it's at.
you got Disney Plus, you got Apple TV Plus, you got Paramount Plus. I'm sure there's others. I know there's a wrestling streaming service called Impact Plus. So yeah, so the third of the newer shows is an animated series called Star Trek Lower Decks. Second Star Trek animated show, first comedy animated series.
Oh,
It's very in the vein of Rick and Morty. Um,
Lower Decks. Huh.
but
Wow.
unlike what I was mentioning about Star Trek Into Darkness, where like the people who wrote that movie know that people like Wrath of Khan but don't really understand why. I feel like the people who write Rick and Morty,
Lower
basically,
Decks.
the people who are behind Lower Decks actually really love Next Generation because there's so many like little like obscure like references to it and like lots of like little in jokes.
So if you love Rick and Morty and love Next Generation,
This is the show for you.
this is the show for you.
Now, unfortunately, well, I love Next Generation. Unfortunately, I don't love Rick and Morty. So
What?
this I watched through the first season and thought it was fine. It's up to season two now. It's been renewed for a third season. I don't know if I'll keep going with it.
But Pickle Rick and Mulan Szechuan sauce
Uh,
and
Pit,
interdimensional cable.
Pickle Rick my balls.
Pickle Rick my balls. And
uh,
I think that's a pretty good note to go out on.
there's also Star Trek Prodigy, which is another animated series. That one's aimed
Wow,
squarely
it
at
just keeps going.
that one is aimed squarely at children. It does feature Kate Mulgrew returning as a hologram version of Captain Janeway from Voyager. I haven't watched it.
Oh, it's like 3D.
Yeah, I haven't watched it. It's a show very much aimed at young children. So
Oh, yeah, you can tell. Huh.
yeah.
It looks well animated. Wow.
At the time of recording, there is in mere days there is a new show that is a spin-off of Discovery called Star Trek: Strange New Worlds, which
What? I had no idea all of these Star Treks were out there.
this one is about the crew of the USS Enterprise 10 years before the original series. So some of the cast, not the cast members, but some of the characters are the same. Some of them are different. Like
Okay. Huh.
Spock is there. Nurse Chapel, Uhura, obviously all played by different people. It's been 55 years.
No, you just like mocap and CG them. They'll be fine.
Yeah, you just go all Tron Legacy about it.
Yeah. Nobody will be able to tell the difference. They'll be fine.
I'm looking forward to that show. My one of my favorite film critics, who is a podcaster and a big Star Trek fan, wrote a review for Slash Film for the first. His name's Whitney Seibold, for the first 5 episodes of Star Trek: Strange New Worlds, and he said that this is the best Star Trek has been in decades. So,
Oh, really?
so I am looking forward to that.
And this is about to come out.
Yeah, it's about to premiere very soon.
Okay, it looks kind of cool. I'm checking it out. Okay. But yeah, that's I think, unless you've got like 7 more Star Treks I've never heard of.
Well,
that
actually,
was like 5 more than I thought there were.
Actually,
Star Trek playing cards.
There's a Star Trek adventure game coming out by former Telltale Telltale people. That's coming
They're back,
out soon.
baby. They're back. The Wolf Among Us 2 is coming out.
So
a Star Trek game.
They're making a Star Trek adventure game. So it's coming out later this year, I think. So I'm looking forward to that.
I will play the heck out of that.
That was episode 31, Lasercomb Podcast. Best way to support the show, go to patreon.com/lasercomb, LAZORCOMB. The $5 and up tier, you get preamble audio of this and all the other shows we do week in and week out, a monthly-ish commentary track, and more. At the $10 tier, you get our weekly-ish news and current events program, Lasercomb Tonight. And you also get the opportunity to pick a show for us to review a random episode of on this very podcast.
That's right.
So if you want to get in on that, go to patreon.com/lasercomb. Follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/lasercomb, or you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Lasercomb. Cal, you are at?
I am at NeoCal, NEO_KAL.
I just mentioned Patreon. Beginning with the next episode of this podcast, episode 32, we will be doing an entire month of Patreon sponsored shows. And next month, on the next episode of the podcast, Lasercomb Podcast number 32, we are going to be reviewing our patron Jared, aka Ranger64.
Ranger64.
We are going to be reviewing his pick, and the show that he chose for us was Smallville.
You ever watch it?
Yep. Oh yeah. It's funny. I watched the first few seasons and the last couple, but there was a period of like 4 or 5 seasons in the middle there that I didn't watch it at all. So as always, we're gonna go to the random number generator and figure out how many episodes overall did Smallville have. 217.
Holy moly.
It lasted 10 seasons. And it was network TV too, so those seasons were like 20 plus episodes.
Wow.
All right. So one random number between 1 and 217, and here we go. Somebody save me. Wow, 17. All right. That's got to be a season 1 episode. 17. An episode called Reaper that originally aired on April 23rd, 2002. All right.
Huh.
So we'll be back next week with episode 17 of Smallville. And until then, I've been one of your hosts, The Siege.
And I'm your other host, NeoCal.
And until next time, thanks for listening, and I've got faith of the heart.